Dynasty Podcast, the greatest podcast that you didn't want or ask for. And now introducing your hosts, Jake the Gluten-Free Harris and Peter Cheater Pigoo Hot Sizzle O'Donnell.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, men who act like children of all ages, the Missouri Crime Society proudly presents to you a significantly more sober podcast than the one you guys got last night. If you haven't watched it, I highly recommend that you do not. Because it ended up being like 43 minutes, and it was bad, I'm pretty sure. But if you like, hot garbage, flaming train wrecks, give it a watch. Or don't. Probably don't. Okay, so we are going to just kind of redo that last one. We're not going to talk about free agents much. I'm going to give a super quick rundown on the quarterback scenario and the starting quarterbacks that are still left to find homes, because there still are some things hanging out in the air. We're going to talk about some takeaways from the 2022 fantasy football season, and we're going to talk about the NFL draft and the rookie draft in the Moiploy Dynasty Boys League. So, we'll talk about that last. So if y'all don't have a ton of rookie picks, and you're like, man, I don't give a fuck what you have to say about the rookies, that's fine. Stick around for the beginning. Check out for the last part. It's all good. I love the sound of my own voice, so you won't offend me. I'm having my fun just talking to myself right here. God, I'm good looking. All right. So, the quarterbacks and how it kind of shakes out. Teams that need a quarterback really, really badly. Atlanta, Carolina, Houston, Indy, Vegas, New Orleans, the Jets, Tampa Bay, Washington. All right. So, what we have right now is Atlanta seems to be going with Desmond Ridder. They could definitely still grab somebody. Where's my? There, I need my phone for me real quick. They could definitely still go and grab somebody. However, I really expect them to go with Ridder. Now, unless Will Levis somehow falls to them, they could grab Will Levis if Vegas is like, nah, we got Jimmy G. That's our quarterback of the future, because Vegas is a very poorly run institution. I could definitely see them thinking that. Yeah. Then there is the next team on the list, Carolina. They traded up from the 109 to the 101. They gave up a shit ton to go do it. So whoever gets drafted to Carolina is in a rough spot. They don't really have any good receivers, and according to my quarterback research model, that does not bode well for the quarterback that ends up in Carolina, unless it's a guy like Anthony Richardson, who are kind of like, he's kind of fail-proof in fantasy football because of his rushing upside. But if a guy who's a bit more immobile in the pocket, or C.J. Stroud or Bryce Young end up in Carolina, I would fully expect them to not succeed their rookie year. And if they do not get an elite pass catcher in Carolina by the end of the second year of that quarterback starting tenure, I don't anticipate that quarterback is going to have a good career. Houston, they're going to be drafting. Now, they don't have an elite pass catcher, far from it. John Mechie hopefully will be rejoining the team, and then hopefully they take that 112 that they have in the NFL draft and spend that on a wide receiver to get an elite wide receiver, or a wide receiver who will be developed into elite by the end of the second year. Because the progression window is the first 2 years that a quarterback starts for that team. So if they sit behind somebody for a year, like Jordan Love's progression window literally hasn't started. They still have 2 years to get him an elite pass catcher for him to turn out to be an elite NFL quarterback. Indy, likely going to be drafted as well. Indy is in a significantly better situation. However, they do not have an elite pass catcher. What about Michael Pittman? Bro's not elite yet. He could develop into an elite receiver, I don't anticipate that he is or will. So while the situation is better, I would expect the quarterback who gets drafted to Indy to end up more as a guaranteed journeyman than like a guaranteed elite quarterback. Unless, of course, they go and add an elite pass catcher. It's still possible. Vegas. If a quarterback gets drafted to Vegas, it's tricky because they have Devontae Adams that is a perfect kind of receiver to develop a young quarterback, to present them with winning opportunities that are going to allow them to progress. However, if Jimmy Garoppolo cucks that guy for the entire year, then Devontae Adams leaves, then the rookie quarterback's coming in their second year, but they have like fucking no one to throw the ball to, then we got baited. It's really bad, and it sucks to suck, and the quarterback is probably going to be fucking dog shit because they're not going to have they're not going to be presented with winning opportunities. They're not going to learn to recognize those winning opportunities on an NFL level, and they're not going to progress into a winning NFL caliber quarterback. New Orleans Saints, they signed Derek Carr. That is final. They're not going to be drafting a guy. I don't even think they have a first-round pick this year because I think they traded away to get Chris Olave. The Jets allegedly are getting Aaron Rodgers. At this point, I would be like, fuck it. You want a first and then some? You want like a first and a second? How about I just go get a guy who's not 39 years old? I'm going to go get Lamar Jackson for the 2 firsts of compensation that I would have to give up to get Lamar Jackson. And then hopefully that gets the Green Bay Packers to come down in price. That's what I would do if I was the Jets. I'd go pursue Lamar Jackson and be like, use that as leverage to get Packers to come down on Rodgers. Tampa Bay ended up with Baker Mayfield, which is interesting. I need to adjust that in my notes here. And I truly expect that Baker Mayfield will be the starting quarterback in Tampa. I also fully expect that at some point he will do Baker Mayfield things and get himself benched at some point during the season. But again, I also expect that Baker Mayfield is about to have the best season of his career. Reason being, Chris Godwin, Mike Evans. The 2 best receivers he's ever played with. He never set foot on the same field as Cooper Kupp. Therefore, those are the 2, because Cooper Kupp was injured by the time Baker took over. Those are the 2 guys that are going to be playing with Baker Mayfield, and I anticipate he's going to have a great season for Baker Mayfield. Now, what does that mean by like NFL standards? Middle, lower middle, somewhere in there. You might see a little bit of that rookie season Baker Mayfield stats, but those weren't truly like. Let me look it up. I don't believe those were Baker Mayfield. I don't believe that those were truly elite numbers. Yeah, he finished as the quarterback 16 that year. 3,700 yards. I think I think we're definitely looking at like a 4,000 plus yard season for Baker Mayfield here. I'd be hoping for about 25 touchdowns and low double-digit picks. So that gets you basically a quarterback 2. That's great. It's very usable. And Rich, who owns Baker Mayfield, desperately needs a quarterback 2. So that is very good for Rich. Washington. Honestly, I can't even tell you off the top of my head who the starting quarterback for Washington is. It's kind of bad. Sam Howell. The odds of a 5th round pick, like, really performing are kind of slim to none. That said, I don't know how well 5th round picks truly fit the quarterback progression model that I have created, but Sam Howell does have a chance to be presented with winning opportunities. Now, Terry McLaurin is not an elite, according to my model. He is not an elite receiver. He is very good, but he is not elite. However, Jahan Dotson could very well end up being the elite wide receiver. And if it's not Jahan Dotson, he's got Curtis Samuel as like, he doesn't have scrubs for his first 3 options in the passing game. Excuse me. So, Sam Howell with a touch of rushing upside there is in a very intriguing. He's a very intriguing quarterback. It could be a lot like fucking long neck. What's his name? I've got a pretty long neck myself. Davis Mills. Look at that tree trunk. I got Davis Mills neck. I'm gonna do this especially. Davis Mills, where he had a great rookie season, great first season starting, and then they're like, well, kick you to the curb. But really, I believe that Washington is going to be starting Sam Howell in the hopes that they'll be contending for the number 1 pick in 2024 and getting one of those 2 insanely elite prospects in 2024. Now that I pointed out how long my neck is, I can't stop staring at it. There, that's better. That's better. Okay, so yeah, in 2024, Drake May and one everyone wants, whose name I can't think of. Yep, nope, can't think of it. Anyways, so yeah, I think that's what Washington's plan is to let Sam Howell fail himself into giving up his job, so that they'll have a great draft pick, or at least close enough that they'll be able to trade up if the 101 is not a quarterback needy team and they can give up like the 103 and everything, their firstborn son and all that stuff, because the quarterbacks that are coming out in the 2024 class are highly anticipated. We've talked a lot about quarterbacks so far. So teams that sort of needed a quarterback, Geno ended up being a bridge guy. He has all of his guaranteed monies like right up front. Only this year is really like guaranteed. They could pretty much cut him with like almost no real losses next year. Ryan Tannehill, likely going to be a starter there. Tennessee Titans are a guy. That's a team I could see grabbing a guy like Hendon Hooker in the second round. In that case, I would be extremely intrigued in Hendon Hooker. Arizona, they need a quarterback to just like get them through the season, but I don't think that's their goal. I think they want to intentionally lose games without like intentionally losing games by not citing a good backup quarterback, even though they obviously know that they need one. So I think the worst case scenario for Arizona would be like somehow they put together a couple of wins, they're still in the hunt. Kyler tries to push to come back early. So like the worst case for Kyler owners. Kyler pushes to come back early, doesn't look good, and essentially his value just like fucking plummets. Because people are already like, I don't know, dude plays Call of Duty, he's kind of small, and he gets injured a lot. I think this season is the season that like could take the Kyler narrative. This could be, by the end of the season, we might be like buying Kyler Murray because of just how cheap he may end up being. Teams that are going to need a quarterback soon: Detroit, Jared Goff. You don't want to end up at the top of the draft, and I don't think it's Detroit's goal to end up at the top of the draft. So there is a decent chance that they take a guy to replace Jared Goff in a year or two. The Giants, they've re-signed Daniel Jones. Minnesota's re-signed Kirk Cousins. Or still has Kirk Cousins. So, but they're going to need Kirk Cousins. Is like Minnesota is going to need a quarterback eventually. Okay, blah, blah. Of the potential QB starters, Derek Carr's in New Orleans, Aaron Rodgers hopefully in the Jets, Jordan Love, Green Bay, Baker Mayfield ended up in Tampa. Carson Wentz, I believe, is still hanging out in the wind. Jameis Winston confirmed backup behind Derek Carr. He said, yeah, you can pay me $8,000 to not have a job, or $8 million to not have a job. Sounds great. Jimmy Garoppolo confirmed in Vegas is the starter. Lamar Jackson not necessarily confirmed to the Ravens. However, if Lamar Jackson leaves, he opens up a vacuum that's going to be a spot that gets filled by a different starter. So it's kind of a net zero there. Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, Anthony Richardson and Will Levis. I expect 2 of those guys to be starters. I expect Richardson and Levis to be sitting behind somebody, sitting behind like an Andy Dalton. sitting behind well, frankly, I don't think like sitting behind Sam Howell would be good. I don't really think that sitting behind Desmond Ridder, they're going to like learn a ton. It'd be mostly like them catching up to the NFL speed, not them necessarily being like prepped and they're not studying how Desmond Ridder plays football. I don't expect Malik Willis to get many starts this season. He really didn't look good last year. The other big quarterback controversy is Lance and Purdy and Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold was confirmed 49ers backup essentially, although not good for Trey Lance truthers. 49ers have announced that it will be a quarterback competition between Sam Darnold and Trey Lance to see who gets the start, because that basically the signing of Sam Darnold tells me that Brock Purdy will likely not be ready for the start of the season, because you don't pay a guy $8 million to be a third string quarterback. What that also signals to me is that if Purdy is healthy and does look good, there is a very good chance that one of those two guys, Lance or Purdy, is going to get traded. Now, if Lance is the week 1 starter and looks good, it'll probably be Purdy, because he's got the team investment. But if Lance is struggling and Purdy comes back, if I'm the 49ers and I expect Brock Purdy to be back by like week 2 and for him to look good, I'm starting Sam Darnold week 1. Because what I don't want is for Trey Lance to go out there, injure himself, or look like shit, completely tank his trade value, and now I'm stuck. I've paid 3 first-round picks to get this guy, and he's fucking nothing. He's just absolutely nothing. What I want to do is at least get a first-round pick back for Trey Lance, trade him to a team like I could see him going to Washington. I could see Trey Lance going to he could go to Tennessee. I could see Trey Lance going to Minnesota even. I could see him going to I could see him going to Atlanta. So those are a couple teams that like would be a really good spot for Trey Lance. Fuck, even Tampa Bay. You know, like let Baker start for a couple games while he catches up on the playbook, and then like just fucking throw him in there. How could he fail? He's got 2 really, really good. He's got 2 elite receivers, actual elite according to my progression model, actually elite receivers, Godwin and Mike Evans. It would be super difficult for a rookie quarterback to fail in Tampa Bay. However, it's also super difficult for a rookie quarterback to fail in San Francisco. I don't think Trey Lance has failed because I don't think he's been given an opportunity, frankly. All right, enough about that. 18 minutes in. But I feel like this was a much more good, in-depth, non-rambling, non-drunken 18 minutes we spent so far. Let's pull up the Dynasty takeaways. All right, so quick 2022 Dynasty takeaways. The Year 2 breakout is very real in the NFL for wide receivers, and is kind of the current model for like, it used to be the Year 3 breakout was what all the fantasy analysts talked about, but the NFL is changing. Rookie wide receivers are significantly more involved now, and sophomore wide receivers are basically at near the peak of their careers at this point. It used to be like Year 5 was like the peak of your career. Now we're seeing wide receivers start to peak much, much, much earlier. Look at Odell Beckham Jr., for example. He peaked his rookie season. How much earlier can you peak? Just kidding. I had to take a shot at OBJ. The Year 2 breakout is real in the NFL. Amon-Ra St. Brown. Wow. I was a doubter. I was wrong. Devonta Smith. I was a doubter. I was wrong. Jamar Chase. I did not doubt that. Nor should I have. Guys who stink their rookie year generally stink in the second year. Rashad Bateman. Elijah Moore didn't really stink, but, you know. Kadarius Toney did stink. Again, just injuries for both of those guys, frankly. Nico Collins, Rondale Moore. There is something that's interesting in that there is the art of the handcuff wide receiver. Josh Palmer was wildly valuable to dynasty teams last season. I had him on my championship roster, and he carried me through several weeks of injuries and bye weeks. So there are handcuff wide receivers out there. It's just you have to find the situation where, like, there's just absolutely nobody beneath that third wide receiver. Another takeaway is that offenses only really support 2 elite pass catchers. If you have 3 elite players, 2 of them will maintain their elite production, and the third will just become solid. In the case of Philadelphia, Devonta Smith, A.J. Brown, Dallas Goedert. Now, they weren't on the field for a ton of time at the same time, but Dallas Goedert is the one who became the third option in that offense. And it's going to be interesting to see how that shakes out with Dallas Goedert being healthy, Devonta Smith not or having to compete more with Devonta Smith for targets, Devonta Smith having to compete more with Dallas Goedert for targets. Another takeaway, when an elite wide receiver goes to a new offense, they do not regress much, if at all. There is a general, like, one of the fantasy myths is that wide receivers going to new teams is bad for that wide receiver. That's because elite wide receivers don't go to new teams. They stay with the team that drafted them until, like, their late 20s, early 30s. And then they'll switch to a team after they're past their prime. Devontae Adams changed teams last year. Tyreek Hill changed teams last year. A.J. Brown changed teams last year. All 3 certified fantasy studs. All 3 did not regress. In fact, all 3 progressed, except for Devontae Adams, because he didn't catch a million touchdowns. Devontae still had a great season, though. All 3 did a great job. So if we see an elite wide receiver going to a new offense, only an elite wide receiver. DJ Moore, I don't think he's elite. I think he's good. I think he's very, very good. I do not think he is elite. He does not fit my elite quarterback progression model. All right. Do coaches make the biggest difference for quarterbacks? My progression model says that an elite wide receiver makes the biggest difference for a quarterback, but Daniel Jones had a great season, has a great coach. Trevor Lawrence had a good season, has a great coach. Russell Wilson had a horrible coach, had a horrible season. Coaches are interesting because it's really difficult to define an elite coach statistically. It's pretty easy to define an elite wide receiver statistically, but coaches not so much. It's going to be interesting to factor that in going forwards. Are there coaches with proven track record of elite quarterbacks, and do they carry that on afterwards? I don't know if I'm going to be able to include that in my progression model because it's so difficult to define that. Like Josh McDaniels, he was great with Tom Brady. It's been shit anything else he's touched, he's just fucking bad. All right. Quarterbacks, there's been this recent narrative in a lot of the dynasty community that quarterbacks age like a fine wine. Well, I think we saw last year that 34 is actually pretty old for quarterbacks. A lot of people say, I don't care how, 34, fine, that's fine. They've got another 2, 3, 4 years left in the tank. No. Only the elites of the elites have that. 34 is still pretty old for a quarterback. We saw a massive drop-off from Ryan Tannehill, a massive drop-off from Russell Wilson, a massive drop-off from Matthew Stafford. 2 of those being likely future Hall of Famers in Wilson and Stafford. So 34 is actually pretty old for a quarterback. Another takeaway, old running backs do not lose much steam until they lose their job. Examples, Derrick Henry, Christian McCaffrey, Austin Eckler, Nick Chubb, Aaron Jones, Dalvin Cook, Joe Mixon, Leonard Fournette, James Conner. While those guys may not have been amazing, the fact is they all got massive workloads that kept their fantasy points, even if they're on the field. Like Dalvin Cook wasn't as efficient, Joe Mixon wasn't as efficient, Leonard Fournette wasn't as efficient. They kept getting touches upon touches upon touches to keep their fantasy points elevated. So if you have a old running back, the dynasty meta, like the meta game of dynasty, hates old running backs, hates running backs on their second contract. But frankly, I'm actually going to zig when everyone else is zagging in the entire dynasty community, because if I'm trying to win, the cheapest points I can buy, the cheapest and most insulated points, when I say insulated, I mean like unlikely to bust points that you can buy as a dynasty manager, is a running back who's just signed their second contract with the team that drafted them. That's extremely important. David Montgomery doesn't count with the team that drafted them, because with the team that drafts them, re-signs them after the rookie contract's up, that shows investment. That shows that they're going to maintain the role that they had during the rookie contract. So if they had the workhorse role, they're likely going to maintain the workhorse role. Derrick Henry, CMC, Austin Eckler, Nick Chubb, Aaron Jones, Joe Mixon, Dalvin Cook. Like, those are all guys who who continued their massive workloads after the rookie contract was up. And nowadays, you could buy a guy like a Nick Chubb after he's on, like, the first year after his rookie contract. You could buy him for like a singular first and maybe a third. If you're a contender, it's probably a mid to late first. At that point, you're giving away your rights to a guy like Sky Moore, the Green Bay dude, Christian Watson. This year would be like you're giving up your rights to like Quentin Johnson, Jordan Addison, Zach Charbonnet, Michael Mayer. Like, yeah, absolutely. I would take Nick Chubb for any of those guys. Maybe not at this exact moment, because Nick Chubb's like 27. That's pretty old for running back. But like, Nick Chubb's probably still got 2 years left of elite production, and those are incredibly cheap, incredibly insulated, like well protected fantasy points that you're adding to your team. So I think this is a great time to zig and just buy those fantasy points. Christian McCaffrey is literally a first, and he's, according to Keep Trade Cut, he's worth a first and a second round pick, and like, that's it. It's fucking wild to me that you can buy a league winning, like the 101 in redraft. You can buy the 101 in redraft for a first and second round pick. It's time to zig. The entire league is zagging. It's time to zig while everyone else zags, man. The rest of the league is not valuing these running backs on their second contract with the teams that drafted them. Now, granted, the Panthers traded CMC. That doesn't matter. The fact is they re-signed him to big money contract. That shows that he has value and is going to maintain the workhorse role, yada, yada. Josh Jacobs is an example. They tagged him. They did not sign him. I am not buying Josh Jacobs because they do not show the commitment to him. They don't want to commit to him. They showed him a tag. Very different than a 3 or a 4 year deal after the rookie contract is up. I got to fly through these last couple. I'm passionate about that one, though, so I wanted to talk about it. Draft capital matters for running backs when considering incumbent job security. Antonio Gibson lost his job. Josh Jacobs did not. Josh, going into training camp, everyone was thinking that Gibson was going to lose a couple touches, not his fucking job. Everyone thought Josh Jacobs was going to lose his job, but draft capital matters for running backs when considering incumbent job security. So, who's a team that drafted a second-round running back last year? Breece Hall. If the Jets acquire a new running back, I'm not worried for Breece Hall. Who is the other second-round running back that got drafted last year? James Cook, Breece Hall. Kenneth Walker. If the Seahawks draft another running back, I'm not concerned for Kenneth Walker. If the Steelers draft a running back, I'm not concerned for Najee Harris. I'm not. Draft capital matters for running backs considering incumbent job security. And another takeaway. The Achilles is still undefeated. James Robinson, Cam Akers, both kind of just vanished. The one interesting one is D'Onta Foreman. Several years removed from his Achilles. Looked good. Looked very good. So, there's hope for a Cam Akers owner out there. Rich, softball guy, if you're thinking, do I just drop Cam Akers? No. Give him a couple years. He may end up as D'Onta Foreman. Someone who's worth like a third-round pick. But his fantasy points were worth more than a third-round pick to any contenders. My headset just cut out on me. Sorry. All right. The next thing. Handcuff your starters if you are competing. Lamar Jackson and Huntley. Trey Lance and Brock Purdy. Breece Hall, Zonovan Knight. If you are competing, handcuff your starters. It's incredibly cheap. Do you know how cheap it was to get Brock Purdy before Trey Lance went down? Free. He was literally on waivers. Huntley would be like a 4th-round pick. Zonovan Knight was on waivers. If you are competing, have the handcuffs to your starters. If you're got a running back, and it's like, have the 3rd-string running back if you can't get the 2nd, because a lot of times, like, Michael Carter is the 2nd-string running back for the Jets. However, he's like a pass-catching specialist, so he doesn't, like, when the guy who's the grinder, 1st and 2nd and 3rd down grinder goes down, that doesn't mean that the pass-catching specialist fills in for the grinder. No, it means the 2nd-string grinder goes up, and the pass-catching specialist stays in his job. So that 3rd-string running back is actually the 2nd-string running back. It's just that he's the second. They're not all running backs. You can't think of them that way. You have to think of them almost as a completely different position, completely different depth chart. The passing down back has his backup. The 1st and 2nd down back has their backup. Even though it's all running back, they're actually like different columns in the depth chart, realistically. So have the backups for your starters if you're competing. The year after an ACL may not be the right time to buy a guy. J.K. Dobbins, Saquon Barkley, Javonte Williams, several recent ACLs. Saquon Barkley looked good 2 years after his ACL. J.K. Dobbins looked miserable 1 year after his ACL. Javonte Williams coming up on his year after his ACL. I am out on Javonte Williams. If you can sell him now, because his value will tank down to J.K. Dobbins level likely by the end of next season. Or mid-season. He may recover faster than J.K. did, but we'll see. This would be a good time to buy J.K. He's at an all-time low. He's got decent draft capital. And yeah, I'd give it a shot. I hear babies peeping. All right. Well, they seem to be quiet. All right. So, and the last thing, my last final takeaway is, do not let landing spot tempt you away from sticking to your rookie tier rankings. Meaning, I had Chris Olave a tier above Sky Moore, but the Chiefs landing spot tricked me into taking Sky Moore over Chris Olave. Do I regret that? Yes, immensely. So much. Because my team could be even more ridiculously stacked if I had Chris Olave. All right. That is all the takeaways. It's already 34 minutes. It's late. I'm going to bed. We'll do the rookie draft another time. We'll do the 2.0. And we'll pull up like an actual NFL draft. And we will do we'll take the NFL mock draft and we'll apply it as if it were reality and draft based on if that were to be the draft that happens. That'll be fun. So we'll do that at some point. I've got a ton of other things I want to talk to y'all about. Love you guys. Hope you enjoyed. I hope my ramblings are entertaining at the very least, because I have fun talking about it. I'd love to talk with y'all guys about it, but I'll have to settle for talking with myself. Enjoy the pictures of fish. Bye.